The thyroid gland is an organ that controls almost everything, every single cell in your body. Yet we usually think about it only when something goes wrong. Watch this video till the end and you'll know what your thyroid really needs and which foods and even cosmetics can trigger iodine deficiency and cause goiter. The thyroid regulates the metabolism of every cell in the body. It tells them when to store nutrients, like sugar and fat, and when to use them to build new tissues and new cells. Without thyroid hormones, cells can't renew themselves, yet they continue to age and die at the same rate. That causes a lot of impairs and problems in different organs. Here are the typical symptoms of thyroid hormone deficiency. But before we get into that, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't lose me in your feed. So if you often feel tired or fatigued, if you are always cold or your feet are freezing, if your skin is pale and dry, your thinking slows down, your speech becomes slightly sluggish, you gain weight even though you eat less, you notice constipation, poor memory, or low libido, these can all be signs of thyroid hormone deficiency. There are many reasons why the thyroid might stop working properly: genetic conditions, autoimmune diseases, inflammation, and one of the most common causes is iodine deficiency. According to the World Health Organization, iodine deficiency is one of the most widespread non-infectious health problems. A huge number of people around the world suffer from it. Most people know that iodine and the thyroid are somehow connected, but very few actually understand how. The thyroid produces two hormones, thyroxine, T4, and triiodothyronine, T3, and iodine is the driving force behind both of them. Iodine is a central active part of the molecules of these hormones. Without iodine, the thyroid simply has nothing to make hormones from. But why does a lack of iodine cause the thyroid gland to enlarge and a goiter to form? It's because the thyroid has a boss, your brain. More precisely, a small gland in the brain, the pituitary gland. The pituitary produces TSH, or thyroid-stimulating hormone. You can think of TSH as a green light for the thyroid. When it shows up in the blood, it signals the thyroid to start producing hormones. But the pituitary isn't a clueless boss. It keeps tabs on how well its employee is working. If it releases TSH, but the thyroid still isn't making enough hormones, the pituitary senses that and sends even more TSH, essentially saying, "Come on, get to work, we need more hormones." If the thyroid still doesn't respond and the pituitary sees no improvements, it thinks, well, maybe the gland must be too small to produce enough hormones, and starts trying to make it grow. The thyroid enlarges, sometimes dramatically, and that's when a person is diagnosed with a goiter. Thus, a high TSH level indicates a thyroid hormone deficiency, while a low level indicates an excess. This is why doctors often measure TSH level when testing thyroid function. So, how can you protect yourself from iodine deficiency and support your thyroid? First, make sure you are getting enough iodine. But don't start taking iodine supplements on your own. It's easy to overdose on iodine, and too much of it can actually trigger inflammation in the thyroid or even autoimmune thyroiditis. You only need about 150 micrograms per day, and that need can be easily met by eating iodized foods. Different countries have different policies on food iodization. In some countries, iodine is added to salt by law. In others, it is voluntary, and in some places, iodine is added to products like flour, milk, or bread instead of salt. Here's where the problem comes in. There is a growing trend of diets that eliminate entire food groups. For example, salt-free diet, gluten-free diet, or lactose-free diet. For example, many people know that eating too much salt is bad for the heart and blood vessels, as it raises blood pressure and increases cardiovascular risk. But studies show that eating too little salt can also be harmful, especially when people go completely salt-free. Adults should consume no more than 5 grams of salt per day, but also no less than 2 grams. Even for those with heart disease, the minimum is never 0. If you have high blood pressure or cardiovascular issues, it's reasonable to reduce your salt intake to around 2 or 3 grams per day, but cutting it out entirely isn't healthy. And if you are reducing your salt intake, you should think about where your iodine will come from instead. 1 gram of iodized salt contains about 30 micrograms of iodine. So, if you are consuming around 5 grams of iodized salt per day, you'll get your full daily dose of 150 micrograms of iodine, exactly what your body needs. The second major reason for iodine deficiency is the trend for special types of salt. A lot of people believe that sea salt, for example, is a healthier option than regular table salt. And since the sea is always associated with iodine, it seems logical that sea salt must contain more of it. But in reality, that's not true at all. If we are talking about natural unfortified sea salt, it actually contains very little iodine, almost none. So, when you buy sea salt that isn't labeled as iodized or fortified, you are getting less iodine than you would from the cheapest iodized table salt. So, there is really no need to spend extra money on fancy sea salts. They are not healthier than regular iodized table salt. If you live in a country where bread or flour is iodized, but you've completely cut these foods out, for example, if you are on a gluten-free diet, that also puts you at risk of iodine deficiency. The same goes for a lactose-free diet and sometimes even a vegan one. It's worth carefully considering where you get your iodine. In this chart, I'll show examples of which products are iodized in different countries. It's worth checking what exactly gets iodized where you live, or if such regulations even exist at all. Besides that, there are certain foods and even cosmetics that can block your body from absorbing iodine, even if your diet contains enough of it. These substances are called goitrogens, from the word goiter, because they can actually cause one. The biggest offenders are tobacco and alcohol. Therefore, if you lead an unhealthy lifestyle, your body will likely have difficulty getting enough iodine from food, which can lead to thyroid hormone imbalance. In general, during times of stress, when you are sick, exhausted, anxious, or not taking good care of yourself, your body uses up its internal reserves, and it uses it much faster. That's why it's so important to replenish those nutrients, better through food rather than supplements. Your body's resources aren't endless, and you need to refill them before they run out. But goitrogens aren't found only in unhealthy products. Some of them come from healthy foods. For example, cruciferous vegetables like cabbage, broccoli, radish, daikon, or arugula, something like that. Basically plants with that, slightly spicy cabbage taste. The next big group is soy and soy-based products. Tofu, soy sauce, soybeans, and something like that. Of course, this doesn't mean that if you eat a bit of cabbage or tofu, your thyroid will instantly stop working. Not at all. But if you already have thyroid issues or you are at risk, it makes sense to take a closer look at how much of these foods you are eating. If you feed a rabbit only cabbage, it will grow a goiter, really. So yes, even rabbits shouldn't overeat cabbage. Funny, but it's true. Flavonoids are another type of goitrogen. They are found in many plant extracts and herbal supplements. On the one hand, sellers love to highlight them as something positive, in their supplements. And indeed, some studies suggest flavonoids may boost your immunity or support capillary elasticity, maybe. But on the other hand, they can also block iodine absorption and contribute to goiter formation. Flavonoids also bind to iron, which means it's not a great idea to drink tea or coffee or eat some dark chocolate or take plant-based pills at the same time as iron or iodine-containing foods or supplements. The main issue with herbal remedies and extracts is that they are extremely non-specific. One plant may contain dozens or even hundreds of active compounds. And while some might be beneficial sometimes, others could be toxic. Of course, in marketing, you'll only hear about the good ones, while the harmful alkaloids and other compounds quietly get swept under the rug. But just remember, Socrates was poisoned with plant-based, all-natural hemlock. That's why you should approach herbal medicine with extreme caution. Flavonoids are most concentrated in plant extracts and essential oils. If you have thyroid problems, it's best to limit your use of such products, both internally and topically. Try not to overuse herbal supplements. They are often a waste of money, and they can actually do more harm than good. Share this information with your friends who love buying all-natural supplements and herbal remedies. Even cosmetics can contain goitrogens, especially sunscreens. Two very common UV filters, benzophenone and octyl methoxycinnamate, can really disrupt thyroid function. You'll often find them in the ingredients of sunscreen. Now, that doesn't mean you should stop using sunscreen altogether, but try not to overuse chemical sunscreens, especially on the neck zone. The safer option is to cover your skin with cotton clothing and avoid going out during peak sunlight hours. And if you do need sunscreen, look for physical, so-called mineral filters. Those based on zinc oxide or titanium dioxide, they don't have these negative effects on the thyroid and are much safer overall. Besides iodine, the thyroid also needs the amino acid tyrosine. You can find it in protein-rich foods like meat or chicken. It also needs selenium. You'll find it in a seafood. And B vitamins, again from meat and fish. Antioxidants such as vitamin C and E protect your thyroid from damage. You can get plenty of those from fruits, leafy greens, and vegetable oils. Among all these compounds, selenium is a bit of a special case. It's not as straightforward as it seems, so I'll probably make a separate video about it. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. So, to keep your thyroid healthy, here's what you need to do. First, make sure you are getting enough iodine from food, about 150 micrograms per day. Check which foods are fortified with iodine in your country and make sure you are getting enough. Second, don't block iodine absorption. That means reducing foods that can block it, the so-called goitrogenic foods. Third, support your body with nutrients, especially these ones. All of these nutrients help iodine get absorbed and transported to your thyroid more efficiently. You can get all of these minerals and vitamins simply by eating a balanced, varied diet. That's far better and much more effective than relying on some supplements or pills. I really hope this video made you think about your precious thyroid gland. It's incredibly important for us. Without it, every organ and every tissue in your body would struggle. Take care of yourself. Don't overeat cabbage, and I'll see you in the next video.